I hope you're all doing well. It's been a couple days since I've done my last Bitcoin video, and in that time we've had kind of continuation on the bull run, and now for the last 2 days we've seen a bit of a pullback. So I wanted to do an update on Bitcoin and share this interesting tool with you on TradingView that I think can be useful for kind of eliminating your own bias. I think a lot of people, especially in crypto, probably bought, somewhere towards the top or during the bull run. And now that Bitcoin is pulled back, we're all rooting for Bitcoin to kind of return to all-time highs, right? And so we all have this kind of intrinsic bias for Bitcoin to go up. But as traders, what we want to do is we want to look at the data as objectively as possible. And this is kind of one cool charting technique, tool that you can add to your toolbox on TradingView to help eliminate any bias that you have. And what that is in TradingView, one of the little known things that you can do is you can actually look at the inverted chart, right? So if you type in 1 minus and then your ticker, it's going to bring up, and I already have it here, it's going to bring up that chart, but everything's flipped. So looking at this chart, kind of everything back here is 2013, 2014. We had that crazy bull run, which I wasn't a part of actually, but we had that crazy bull run in Bitcoin history, and then we pulled back very hard. And we pulled back for a couple years after that, and then recently, 2017 we had that massive bull run, and that's what it's showing here, right? Except that the chart's inverted, so instead of up, we're seeing down. One thing I'll say though, as we get into this is, although I think that this inverted chart is useful for kind of forming, an alternative opinion, trying to eliminate some of your bias, it is an inverted chart. And part of charting is seeing what everyone else sees, right? And so, most people are not going to be trading on an inverted chart. So although I think the conclusions here can still be valid, especially from a technical perspective, it might not play out or be directly applicable to what happens, on the standard chart, just because, people aren't looking at the inverted chart. They're looking at the standard Bitcoin chart, right? So, what I think it is really good for though is looking at technicals and indicators and seeing, if what that indicator is telling you lines up on the inverted chart and the normal chart, right? So, let's dig into it a little bit. So the last couple weeks, we've been down here, and Bitcoin has been, on this bull run. And that, everyone's been pretty excited about that. Everyone's been pretty happy about that, and Twitter has gotten a lot more optimistic, and people are kind of expecting Bitcoin to hit 11K or 12K or even all-time highs soon. But I think it's important to cut through that noise and kind of see what the technicals are showing us, right? So let's start there. Okay, so this is Bitcoin all-time high, and since then we've basically come down quite a bit, right? Since December, we've had a very scary bear market, right? And now we're seeing a bit of a bounce. I think the first thing to note, just looking at the candles, right, and the shape of this formation, is that our current bounce is not quite, it doesn't have as much conviction or as some people like to say, violence, right, as our first bounce, right? It's kind of tapering off, and it's kind of rounding out a little bit. If we look at volume, we're kind of seeing the same thing. Volume is not increasing throughout all this; it's kind of dying down. And if we look at our indicators, we're seeing basically a very similar thing, right? So let's look at the MACD first. Right, so here, again, this is an inverted chart, right? So this is sell volume at the top, and this is buy momentum at the bottom, right? Not volume, sorry, momentum. So, when we're coming down here, momentum was decreasing on the sell side, and then we got a bounce, right? Momentum was decreasing, and then we got a bounce. This bounce does have some decent momentum, right? It looks actually, and this is encouraging, it looks like there's a little bit more bullish momentum than there was kind of back here, right? certainly the histogram is wider, and it's a little bit more. It has a little bit more mass to it than what we saw here. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is we are seeing it taper off, right? So just like on our last bounce, we made a really nice move off the lows, kind of reached a top, and then we started to pull back. And we've been seeing that as well. We made a nice move off the lows, and then we have a bit of divergence here, right? And now for this last little leg of our uptrend, we've had divergence on the MACD histogram, and that's been reflected on RSI as well, right? So I kind of identified what I thought was the top, 2 days ago, just because we saw this very strong bearish divergence, right? And I think a lot of people are used to seeing bullish divergence, right? And this is one thing that this chart is really great for, is eliminating your bias in indicators that you're seeing. So you might want price to go back up, but with that divergence, that's kind of a warning sign to look at. And maybe if you're very bullish, you might ignore that. But if you're bearish, it might stand out for you more. But if you invert the chart and you're bullish, then you kind of eliminate that bias. So we're seeing price get lower here, or higher on the standard chart, and we're seeing RSI go up, right? So I'll draw that out really quickly. So on this chart, because everything's inverted, we're seeing bullish divergence, but on the standard chart, this would be bearish divergence. And what happens is, price goes down, RSI goes up, and after that, we expect price to go back up, right? We're looking for reversal of momentum and seeing price go up from here, right? And in this case, that would be kind of a longer pullback for Bitcoin. So I wanted to look a little bit at this larger trend, as well as update you on kind of what I'm seeing or thinking super cycle wise on Bitcoin as well. So I think everyone is very familiar with this log trend line, and everyone was kind of drawing it this way before, and I was expecting this to be an ABCDE triangle, which would have been really nice. It would have meant that we would go lower again, to kind of revisit these lows, but it also make kind of where it would indicate where Bitcoin really was in a larger elevate wave supercycle, right? So the triangle that I was looking at would have been labeled like this. This would have been A, B, C, and then we're hoping price would hit this point and come back down, form a D, and then do an E, and then we would be off to the moon, right? This would have been really nice because for Elliott wave, a triangle appears in wave B, or it appears in the fourth wave, and if it appears in the fourth wave, which is what a lot of people are seeing this as, it would suggest that there'd be a fifth wave, which would mean that we'd have new all-time highs, and Bitcoin could get to 100,000 or even more than that, right? So from an Elliott wave perspective, this looks like wave 1. We have a wave 2, wave 3. This triangle could be our fourth, and then we would have a wave 5. Unfortunately, we didn't get that because price kind of broke out of the triangle, and so what we're looking at might not be an ABCDE triangle anymore. Let me get back in here. My computer's a little bit slow. Okay, so this really technical and really beautiful pattern didn't end up playing out quite as we had hoped. But actually, if I can get my computer to cooperate here, if I draw this triangle again, we still aren't really that far off, especially if we zoom out a little bit. From that original idea, right? So, price doesn't hit this point anymore. Price doesn't hit this point anymore, but we're still in a triangle, and that's really reflected and confirmed by a lot of what we're seeing, especially in momentum, right? So we can see we had a lot of momentum back here, and a lot less momentum now. So it just shows indecision in the market. Here we go. This shows a bit of indecision in the market, and it is promising, right? If I draw it like this, it is promising. We've had more momentum in this current bounce than it looked like we had in the previous bounce. So I think that's an encouraging sign to see continuation. This is also looking, like a little bit of a triangle, and in this configuration, I would expect price to, fall, continue to fall. This would be a continuation pattern, but kind of in the short term, I do see us going higher on this chart, which would be lower in real Bitcoin terms, right? Retesting this part of the triangle would not be strange to me, especially bouncing off this triangle makes a lot of sense to me. And if we look at the MACD, it looks like we're going to do that. It looks like the MACD is going to cross over. We're going to go positive, maybe return to the median line a little bit, and same thing with the histogram. It looks like we've already started it too. There's a little bit of buy momentum here, which is sell momentum in the standard chart, right? So it looks like the retracement is going to go deeper. I don't think that we're going to break break into fresh lows, so that's good. But I don't think that this correction is done yet for sure. And again, this is a TTM squeeze. It's basically telling us the same thing. So, that's more or less all I really wanted to share. I think things look pretty good for Bitcoin, but I don't think that we're going to shoot up to 12K, 14K, 16K tomorrow. I think we are going to see a little bit of a extended pullback here, and before we see some kind of continuation, right? All right, that's all. Thanks, guys.